Okay, welcome to the 35th video community of practice meeting. I'm Pankaj Agrawal, founder of Next Software Solutions and working group leader of this community of practice. So let's get started. We were talking about the completion threshold extension. So yeah, John, so you have added it on the initialized statement. Because it is also related to completion, so maybe we can add it also to the completed statement. So
yeah, so it's only been added to the H5P update that we did. I haven't actually changed the profile documentation. If we wanted to do that, figured I'd wait for confirmation in the meeting for everybody to have their piece.
yeah, so how do we save it? You have included it in the chat, so yes. So this is the extension ID.
So Anthony, I don't think you jumped in on that email thread. Did you have a feeling one way or the other? Do you care? Any opinions on whether or not we should do it?
What?
A while ago, back in early March, sent an email out about storing a value for the completion threshold. So the amount of the video that needed to be watched before a completion statement would be sent, if not 100%. And then we sent out the URI, which is the one that Pankaj just put in chat, and proposed putting in the initialized statement. So your thoughts about that generally?
The fact of the matter is, I really don't know. I think if we're going to have a completion threshold, I don't think we can standardize that. I think that would have to be something that whoever is setting up that video would have to set, because in some cases there are some situations where you must watch 100%. Period. End of story. You have to watch it. And then there are some where maybe we can relax that a little. The other concern I have with the concept of a completion threshold is, okay, I'm watching a video on open heart surgery, but I kind of missed the part that I really, really need to know. So, from a convenience of reporting standpoint, I understand it, but from a technical and pragmatic standpoint, I think any of the cases where, how can I say this? Any of the cases where the threshold for completion would be very important, it would be 100%, which would render it irrelevant. You know what I mean?
Well, so I mean, that's what I thought too when we originally came up with this concept of completed. But in practice, the number of times that the video was completely watched and it would get to 99% or 99.99%, and we couldn't figure out why it wasn't getting to 100. I realize that's an issue with the players, but the problem is especially when we try to get this in H5P, there are so many layers of various libraries that are being used. It's hard to find why 99% is happening. Aside from that, some of these videos have credits. Some of these videos have parts where 100% of the video is not actual educational content. Some of it is like slides or whatever. It's some sort of bit that just isn't material, like I said, credits at the end. And we want them to be able to adjust for that scenario as well. So while I'm comfortable, I agree with you that we shouldn't enforce a particular completion threshold. The whole point of having a threshold in here is so that the statement provider can say, we've adjusted it for this reason, and then if a different person, running record consumer, grab that data and want to use it, then I can at least know what they define it completed as, so that if it's higher than what I set, and there's a bunch of missing completed statements, I can still analyze that data with the understanding of what was going on.
Well, you do make, so the first point you made is good. You know, unfortunately, math is not always the friendliest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're dealing with, you know, it's really nice when you have someone who films something at, you know, 15 frames per second. That math works really nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you have, you know, people like me that film it at 23 or what is it, 20, is it 23.94 or I forget what it is.
Something
The
like that, yeah.
XC spec, you know, that math, you're right, you will never see 100%. The math doesn't work. So I do see that point. That's a valid point. I think my concern though, to your other point about, well, you know, 80, I don't think I'm giving any spoilers away when I say Avengers Infinity Wars is 150 minutes long. 312 of those minutes are the end credits.
Mm-hmm.
They take forever. So I dig your point that, okay, well, the last X percentage may be credits. But if let's say it's the last 20% are credits and I watched 80%, what does that actually mean? That's a legitimate question. I watched 80% of this video. What does that actually mean?
I mean, all that means is that all they can ever mean, as far as we can tell, unless you have other triangulating data, is that the player played for 80% of some portion of the video, right?
Exactly.
Doesn't mean I was watching it. That's why you have to triangulate with other data, right? Like assessment results.
Yeah, I mean, I could have skipped, you know, that's like I was saying before. I could have skipped the 20% that I desperately needed to watch, but I watched the hell out of those ending credits, man. I can tell you who all of the key grips were. They're my boys. So you know, that's you know the concern I have is, you know, one, like, we can't enforce a set. Although, actually, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to add a concern. One is, not only can we not enforce one, but we almost have to, because if you are going, well, no, never mind that. We can't enforce one, but the other is, I think we need to be very clear on what that actually says, because, yeah, okay, you watched 80%, but, you know, maybe you watched 5%, skipped 1%, watched 5%, skipped 1%, watched 5%. I mean, I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, but
I think most of it is subjective and depends on the video itself, as well as the teacher or the author of the video who is examining the student. So if the author has created a video and he considers that if the user has watched, let's say, 90% of the video, or any 90% part of the video, he would consider that he has done considerably well. So at that point, he might want to say that yes, he has watched the video or completed the video. So it might depend on the video itself, as well as what the author or the examiner wants that threshold to be. So we don't want to enforce a specific threshold. It can be anything that the author or examiner wants. We did have we did discuss whether we should send both completion statements, one for the, let's say, if threshold is set to 80%, we send one completion for the 80%. And we should also send one completion when there is 100% completion. So, John, I don't remember what was the conclusion, but yes, I personally wanted that we send both these statements. I don't remember where we concluded.
One thing. Let me throw out here real quick, because it kind of gets to what you were saying. is the threshold would have to be 0. I would say the threshold would have to be 0 to 99, because to Jonathan's point, it will never be 1. It'll never be 100%. In very few players, well, in most players, depending on how you do that math, it'll never reach 100%. Especially if you do an NTSC spec video, you will always have a fraction. You'll always have a fractional result.
I mean, the other times that we run into 99% has just been in the minute time delay between the play and pause events, when those events are captured, and when the actual xAPI statements are sent. So like, play may happen at a certain period of time, but the player itself may add a few milliseconds or a few frames or whatever it is. I think it's frames is what we're doing in there. Before the actual event to collect that data is called, as to where the player is on the timeline. It's all kind of coding junk, but it still causes 99% or some sort of weird artifact like that.
Yeah, so those are technical issues. I don't think we need to worry too much about that. So in the case of video profile demo that we had created, what I had done was, when let's say you click on pause and then play at the same point, there would be few milliseconds of difference, and that would cause this issue. So what I was doing is, if the difference is less than 1 second, I would use the time that when it was paused. So I would use the exact time when it was paused instead of what the player is reporting to be playing at. So I would adjust it that way. So we could adjust some technical issues in this way, but and it depends on how technology advances and those kind of things. So I guess when we are writing a specification, we can avoid those kind of worries. Um, but yes, most important practical thing would be, how important is it to collect 100% completion, even when there is a completion threshold where completion can be triggered at lower percentage score. So if the author has set it to complete at maybe 80%, the completion is triggered at 80% and the completion statement is stored there. But is it useful to store 100% completion as well?
I mean, my answer would be no. I would leave it up to the instructional designer, the educator, whomever, as to whatever threshold they want to set for the video. And once they have set a threshold, whether that be 100% or less, the assumption is that the assumption, whether or not that is a good assumption, is that once they've hit that number, that they've consumed the minimum requirement in order to usefully have absorbed that instructional content, right? That's what they needed to know, was that 90% of it at least. Now again, that may not be an accurate assessment, but once that threshold is met, I mean, I don't really know. It probably doesn't. There's no additional meaning for the extra 10%, except for that the video has been played in its entirety, but that doesn't hold any meaning if your assumption is 90% means they've consumed all the content. So, I mean, I would just say just one statement is sufficient.
So if I think in terms of the author, I agree that when completion is done, I don't care about whether he completes the rest of 30% or 20%. When I look at it as an analysis point of view, where we are analyzing, let's say, 100 or 200 separate videos, results from many different videos at different thresholds, maybe some analysis would be better when we know where the users have completed entirely. I don't know. Anthony might be better at.
Well, I guess we could leave it for them to decide. If you want to put it in the completed statement as well, then the completed can have the criteria of the threshold that it met. And so if it's 80%, then it's 80%. If it's 100, then it's 100. I don't think we have anything that explicitly says you only send one completed statement, since people can complete the entirety of the video more than once, so it wouldn't stop people from sending 2 completed statements. And then using the threshold as a filter.
Yeah, but the point is whether we should enforce them to send another completion statement at 100%. So it is about if statements from video profile are being analyzed, is there a way to find out whether the user completed 100%?
So are you suggesting the person watches it, say the completion threshold is 80%, the person watches it to 85% and then leaves, so there's a completion statement sent, and then the person comes back and watches a little bit more of it, this time gets it to 95%. Do we send another completion statement? Is that your question? Or is it your question that we send one statement saying they completed and another statement saying this is the completion threshold?
Yeah, so if the threshold is 80%, one completion statement will be sent as soon as he reaches 80%. So even if he crosses 80 to 85%, a statement with 80% would be sent to the LRS. Now, if he continues to 85 or maybe 95 or 100, my question is, if he reaches 100, should we send another statement?
Well, I don't agree with the originating premise. I don't think you send a statement as soon as you get 80%. You send a statement when the person stops playing the video. So you would send it, if they play it all the way through to 100%, you would send it on, probably it would be the pause button. So you would send it on pause with whatever that completion is at the point where they hit pause.
When I think it, I think it should be sent when they complete the threshold. So if they complete 80%, that is when they have completed the requirement of completing that video. So at that point of time, one completion statement should be sent.
I cannot imagine a situation where anyone will ever do that.
Another paused statement is always sent, so that is part of the profile. That a paused statement is sent when they end or stop watching the video. So that paused statement also contains the information of how much they completed, 85 or 95 or 100 or whatever.
Have you ever written an xAPI statement to send when you cross a specific timestamp?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, so in the video demo, what happens is when they complete 100%, a statement is sent. So it doesn't mean that they stopped at that point. If they're crossing that point of 100%.
Okay, but try and write one at 80%. The math there gets very tricky, very difficult, and the latency caused by that part of the script running can cause other problems, especially if you're running especially with JavaScript.
No, it won't have any issues.
Yeah, it absolutely will. Trust me. Depending on how you're writing it and which driver you're using, yeah, it absolutely will.
You can check the video demo. You can maybe complete the latter half first and then start from the first half. So
yeah, but you're sending that completion at completion. You're not sending it while the video is playing.
Yeah, it is being sent while the video is being played. So let's say if you watch the second half first. So when you have watched the second half first, you have watched only 50% of the video. Now you come back to the beginning of the video and then you watch the rest half, let's say. So when you're crossing that point where the real 100% completion is happening, a statement will be sent in the background. So
I can
you'd not even know that the statement has been sent.
I can all but guarantee very, very, very few people will do that. What they'll do is they'll wait for the player to complete, which will trigger a pause, or they'll wait for the person to hit pause. At that point, they'll send a statement with the completion status. They won't do it in line. One of the problems here is now you're putting an onus that, you're taxing them for complying with this. You're forcing them to add code that's extraneous.
We haven't mentioned that you have to do it this way. So it's up to the implementer, but in the demo we have done it that way, and it seems to work fine. Because the video will always buffer few seconds of video, so there won't be any issues there when it is sending a statement. At least I haven't seen any issues. It might be on specific browsers or whatever. I don't know.
It's going to be dependent on the browser version, the operating system version, the player you're using, the LRS you're talking to, the connection you're on.
But if you are watching a video, you can see there are a lot of background connections being made. So if you're watching from YouTube, it will make to YouTube or Google servers to pull the buffers and those kind of things. So it is not that one request to the LRS or few requests to the LRS in the background while the video is playing will cause any effect on the video being played. There is already a lot of communication being going on even when we are not doing xAPI.
Okay.
So YouTube calls small pieces of video in the background to buffer them in the browser and then play that. So that is how the background communication works, and one request to the LRS will not affect that. But again, it is the implementation choice. So what should be the decision on whether we should have the 100% or not? I think if you don't want, I guess we can leave it, because when we have the paused, we'll always have that information. So in the paused statement, we'll have the completion percentage there. So if the user has completed 100% in the last pause statement for that video, there will be a completion status.
My vote would be to not do it.
Okay. Anthony?
I agree. No.
Okay, cool. So we'll send one completion statement based on the completion threshold if the threshold is present. If the threshold is not present, we consider it as 1. So in that case, the completion will be sent at 100% of the video. The pause statement will, as it already contains, it will contain the information regarding how much percentage of the video is watched. And I think we should add the completion threshold to both completed statement as well as the paused statement, because both of these statements contain the completion percentage.
Sounds good to me. Easier for us, at least, since this is pretty much what we've already implemented in xAPI.
Okay, that's cool. So where is the book? Let's see if I can. How do I edit this? Was there anything else that we needed to discuss?
Did you feel the need to talk about any of the feedback suggestions that were given by the guy from Yet Analytics?
I'll have to check what it was. Do you remember? Okay, so yes, there was some communication. Yeah. Yeah, there was one confusion related to the language. I'm totally confused about it. So, do you have any thoughts on this? He mentioned that it should be RFC 5646.
Can you copy and paste whatever the thing is into the
Yeah,
chat?
just a second.
It looked like he had already made some requests on Gitbook or something like that.
Yeah, this is what he said for CC lang, CC subtitle lang. And
So the language tags here are like the en-us. Is that what we're talking about in the description?
yeah, so we have mentioned RFC 5646 for the context language. So the context language is the xAPI spec. So we cannot change it. It is RFC 5646. But for CC subtitle language, we had mentioned RFC 1766. So was this intentional, or I don't know why we have different.
I don't really know much about either of those, and so it was certainly not my intention to throw in 1766.
Yeah, I remember we had some discussion somewhere. I don't know where it was. Either it was in some Google Doc, or maybe I don't know. I don't know where it was. We definitely had some communication related to language, but I could not find. Maybe Jason had some idea, but I guess he's busy somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we could ask Jason if he knows. If he doesn't, Anthony's not saying anything, so I'm guessing he doesn't know. If it wasn't one of us, then I think we should just change it to 5646. That's what it's.
Yeah, I have no idea where that came from.
Maybe it's just a really good typo, multiple.
Well, what I'm thinking is likely is someone was looking for the RFC that the xAPI spec uses, and they just tagged the wrong one, would be my guess. The only other thing I can think of is if this is to identify, this is for subtitle language in the context, is that right? The only other thing,
right.
Unless there is an industry standard for players that when they identify the subtitle language, they use RFC 1766. Maybe that's why. But I mean, those would be my only two guesses. But I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't think that was the reason. I I don't remember where we had this discussion. I don't ever remember these RFC numbers, so I cannot say why. I guess we were trying to simplify what is being used instead of making it complicated, but I doubt that it would be changing the RFC numbers. So yeah, if we cannot find that communication, we'll maybe change it to 5646. So I'll note it down. I'll check once again if I can find the information. So apart from that, his concern was mostly related to the JSON LD document and the template. So I don't understand those things, and maybe if you know, you can tell, or maybe we'll have to wait for Jason. I don't even have access to that document. I cannot even change it. So, Jason, John, do you have any idea about these templates and patterns?
Do I have any ideas for the templates and patterns?
I'll copy this text that I sent. It is related to profile specification.
Yeah. I'm not sure what it means to call them general restriction templates. I don't think they're. I mean, I didn't put them up there for them to be any kind of restriction.
Yeah, so it is related to the xAPI profile specification, which defines how the profiles should be defined and how the statements can be verified automatically. So
yeah.
So there is JSON LD definition of JSON LD templates for the statements that the profile sends, and there are different kinds of matching that can take place based on the JSON LD template of the statement and the statement actually sent for the profile.
Okay, well, we can update them so that they can meet the JSON LD rules and all the other components required via this statement template subsection of the profile. I think I put them up there merely because I find people asking me a lot about them, and we've used them for just repurposing across multiple projects. But they don't necessarily follow the spec, at least the profile spec. So we can adjust them to meet that.
Yeah, so Jason had created the JSON LD document for the video profile.
Right.
So we already have the JSON LD document. We don't have explanation regarding it on the Gitbook video profile.
Does the JSON LD document also list statements and patterns as described by the profile spec?
Yeah, that is what is based on the profile specification.
Well, I knew that he had all the stuff for the various properties and stuff that we had. I just didn't realize he had statements and patterns in there. Is that what was being referred to in the tag document that said that we had a bunch of patterns?
I don't know. I don't understand that. This is the first time someone has referenced that document.
Trying to pull up the LD for video profile.
Let me check.
There we go. Author profiles. So it's here. And inside the video.
This is the JSON LD.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I just don't remember seeing it in here, but I may have just not looked carefully. So I see the templates. Templates, general restrictions. Okay, all right. So I see the various statements in here, and so the comment is we need to do what? We need to make sure that the example JSON statements that are listed in Gitbook match the recommended and included items in the author profile. Which we can do.
In the general restrictions, he has added few rules. Are you talking about that?
Well, I guess I'm just trying to make sure I understand what the problem is. So this requirement.
Yeah.
If statement is being valid against the video profile only mesh, it is by design. Any other patterns. Template is never referenced within any of the patterns. And that just includes the 3 rules within all of it. Which 3 rules we're talking about? This must be the ID and timestamp. Sorry, I'm still trying to understand exactly what he's saying.
I think he's trying to say if the general restrictions, if you are trying to match the statement against some other template apart from the general restriction template, why doesn't it why doesn't the general restriction also apply to that statement? And if that doesn't apply, why don't we include these 3 rules in other templates as
well? This one might be out of my scope. I'm not sure if there's supposed to be some sort of an inheritance here, where if the assumption is that all statements will have these 3 rules of the ID, timestamp, and context extensions, and then in addition to, if you use any of the other templates, they must also have these other items if they're recommended or whatever, right?
Yeah. I guess this question This question is related to how the video, how the profile specification works. So I
Yeah,
guess we need to understand if that point is valid. Like if the other template is being checked, the general restriction template will not be checked. And if that is true, we can say that general restriction template is the default template, and
right.
it applies when some other template doesn't apply.
Yeah, I mean this this might be a good question for Russell and Jason, since I'm not exactly sure
Yeah.
what the
So
correct answer is here.
yeah, I'd copied to Jason, but we haven't seen any response from him.
I don't think I've ever read any documentation that explicitly describes how these templates should be checked and patterns should be checked. Only that the information that these templates and patterns exist is available via the JSON. Um,
I guess it might be defined in the profile specification.
yeah, I mean, I haven't read it in depth, so it's possible that I missed it.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I think we kick that one over to, to Russell and Jason and see what they say. It's a
Okay.
fair point, though. I think. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good question. Should be answered.
Yeah. And the other concern was some adjusting some description in the JSON LD document. So
Hmm.
yeah, I don't have access to that document. So maybe JSON.
Well, we could do a pull request on it. I'll try to find time to do that. I don't know if I will, but I'll try. What was guy's name again? Kind of hoping that person would be here today. William. William. Wait. Yeah, I can. I'll see if I can message Jason about it, and if we can get a response from him about.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I got for now.
So was there anything else?
Let's see. No, I'd like to start adding to the site a list of all the tools that are following the video profile. Um, we may also want to put on there the level of compliance, if that's the right word, or yeah, I don't know if there's a better word for that. Because I know there are some things. I think there was some issue with xAPI, something we couldn't do. And I can't remember what it was. I know there's at least some YouTube stuff that's just not sent from the API, and so we just can't send that information even if we wanted to. So things like that we could probably mark so people know. And you can't get subtitles from this, or you can't get full screen from this tool. But anyways, I've seen a lot of chatter in the xAPI cohort and some of the other IEEE things about people that have used the profile and have embedded it in their own pet projects or another tool. So it'd be good to start aggregating a list of what's following the profile.
Yeah, that'll be great. So where should we add that information? What would be the best place?
I think the Git book is currently the most authoritative source. There doesn't seem to be anywhere else that this stuff lives in such description. Unless you think it should be on the vocab site.
No, I don't think it would be in vocab. So maybe we can have one extra
Yeah, like just another.
thing,
Yeah,
or
add that
we
in
could
there.
add to the references.
The other thing too is Andy Johnson was saying that he's hoping that ADL will take a bigger role in hosting profiles. I think xAPI.vocab.pub was started by Jason and some other people. So it was they hosted it and dealt with it, but they wanted it to be transferred to ADL, or ADL wanted it. So I don't know if it moved over or not yet, but I think they want to expand on either this particular tool and the process of getting formalized, approved profiles over,
Okay.
or at least some people there want to. So whatever they end up building might be a good place to eventually migrate over to. But for now, I think the GitHub
Mhm.
makes sense.
Okay. So maybe we can add one more page for who is adopting and using it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Technology that's using it would be good, but also who or case studies or examples or how it's been
Yeah.
used, anything like that would be good. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I can write one in there for our group.
Yeah, that'd be great. So if you know something else, like so far I'm not aware about other people using.
I gotta dig it up. I'll have to go through Slack chat and stuff. And off the top of my head, I know my group and yet and another guy whose name I can't remember. Like I said, I'll have to go through Slack to go look for comments about it again. I didn't write them down.
Yes, someone who has been on the cohort might know few people in the cohort using it. So
Yeah, I'd like to try and do a better job in the next cohort of making sure people are aware of the profile, because a handful of people did video data collection just in their own way, and it'd be ideal to have them at least build off of our stuff if we can.
and with the H5P, is this released or it is still in their development?
It's still in that same thread. So the last thing was they wanted some sort of change. I can't remember what it was now. I think they either wanted to move something around the code or change the way pause or play was dealt with or something like that. I honestly just can't remember. But they asked us to do it, and our development team just said we'd sink too many hours into this already. We just couldn't justify doing any more. So we either need to move forward with it as is, or if can, then they can make the change. And so I think they were going to make the change, and the guy that we've been going back and forth with said that he had some days in May that he could do this. So
Okay.
in theory, at some point this month, he will make that change. At which point, ideally, it'll be adopted.
Okay. So is there a development version which includes it?
A development version. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be so they seem to do their development in kind of like Scrum sprints, and every time they finish a sprint, I think they push up a new version of H5P for reconsumption by by the content management systems that use it. So whenever the end of that sprint is when presumably is when this would be adopted.
Yeah, but before it is released, like, is there a way we can see how it is functioning right now?
Maybe. Let me see. I can't remember if our changes were in the public exposure or not. Hold on one second.
Okay.
It looks like we do have it all in the public. So the issue here, sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback now.
Oh, just a second. Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, I still hear myself.
Sorry for that.
All right.
Is it better now?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you, but there is issue with my headphone.
Just mute for a second. Okay. So we do have it in our public repo. So I just put in 3 links in there for the 3 libraries that were adjusted in H5P to enable the profile, the xAPI video profile. So you can access them there. If I remember correctly, though, because of the nature of this process, you have to update the SQL database with a value to recognize one of the changes, which would be fixed when it's fully adopted. But in this process, if you wanted to do it on your own, it would require the update. I'm looking for the SQL line to share it with you. So, I mean, it's probably simple for you guys. It wasn't for me. I had to get my developers to help me with this, since it requires running a local instance of the WordPress, installing H5P, and then having to clear the cached assets for the site in order to get it to work, plus making the SQL line change. Anyways, let me. Here's the SQL line.
So we need all 3 plugins.
Say that again. I can hear you.
We need all 3 plugins.
Yeah, so you'll have to download. So get your local WordPress set up, install H5P, install the H5P xAPI plugin. So you have to have at least those, and then inside of your WP content, inside the plugins and so forth, you'll need to replace the existing libraries with these 3. All 3 of these are in the pool. And then you have to do the SQL update, which is the line that I just put in the chat. Clear your cached assets, and then reload, and it should work.
Okay. Have you made changes to the H5P xAPI plugin as well?
Yes, we had to make some changes to that too.
Okay.
I can't remember why, but I'm sure it's in the comments. I think these were mostly WordPress specific changes so that we could trigger certain events to send statements.
Okay. Fine. If I get time, I'll try this out and see how it is working.
Okay. If you run into an issue, just let me know.
Okay.
But I'll keep the group updated on when it's finally absorbed. So just here, just as a reminder, let me grab the thread. I'll put it in chat so that it's forwarded.
Okay, fine. So yeah, I guess we can now end today's meeting 2 minutes before time. Unless there is anything else that we want to talk about.
That's it for me. I did put the link to the GitHub thread in chat in case anybody wants to go see where it is.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, John and Anthony. Let's meet next month. Have a great day.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.